Hey everyone, this is Nitro. In this video, I am going to be doing a review of the new Battle Brothers DLC, Blazing Deserts. So I was given early access to this by Overhype Studios to get a feel for how it works before doing this review, so special thanks to them for giving me this access. And I am definitely going to be doing a let's play of this new DLC. Just keep in mind that it's going to be a very long one because I really do want to get through it. So, with that said, I will say this DLC is definitely one that is focused on experienced players who really enjoy the game and are looking for new challenges. Because what I've noticed so far is all the new additions in Blazing Deserts are actually very difficult compared to the regular game. So with all this challenge, it's just unless you have a lot of experience playing the game already, you're going to find it very, very difficult. So with that said, I do feel that this game definitely improves the overall game of Battle Brothers. So if you're a fan of Battle Brothers, or you just are planning to pick it up and then enjoy it, you should definitely buy this DLC. So what does this DLC add? Well, it's listed when you hover over the Blazing Deserts icon. And it says, it adds a new desert region to the south, which is inspired by medieval Arabic and Persian cultures. It adds a new late-game crisis, which involves a holy war, a retinue of non-combat followers with which to customize your company, alchemical contraptions, and primitive firearms. There's new humans and beastly opponents, new contracts and events, and more. So, I'm going to break down some of these components in this review for those who are experienced with Battle Brothers. Okay. First of all, a few things that I've noticed so far. One of the big issues with these new additions is that the enemies seem to be able to spawn right where you start. Okay. What that means is, so far I've encountered two new enemies. The first is the nomadic tribes, which are human enemies, and the second was some flying serpents. Or giant serpents. The nomads are actually more difficult opponents than the bandits that you normally face traditionally in the past. In addition, they don't seem to drop as good gear, so they're more difficult to fight and their gear is not as good for you to earn. So it definitely makes early game more difficult. Right? So that's the first thing. The second thing was I encountered those giant serpents or flying serpents, and those guys I encountered when my party had 8 characters and I was facing against 3 of them. I thought I could take them on very easily. They wiped out my whole party. So there goes my Iron Man mode battle there. So it's good to get some experience with the early game stuff so that I can do this review. But so far my experience has been that a lot of this stuff is more meant for mid game or late game. Well, the nomads can be faced early on. Other than that, I'm going to just quickly start a new campaign and talk about some of these new additions. So, there's new company origins added with this DLC, and there's 3 of them. 1 at each difficulty level. 1 skull, 2 skulls, and 3 skulls. The 1 skull one is simply called Southern Mercenaries, where you just start off in the south with a few southern unique items. Not much to say about that one. The second one is a unique one. Manhunters or slavers. Okay, this one requires you to you start with 2 manhunters and 4 in depth. You can take up to 16 men in battle rather than the standard 12. Okay. The final point though is that having equal or fewer in depth than non-in depth will make your men dissatisfied. So you have to have more in depth or slaves in your party than regular characters. So that's a new addition. 2 other effects of this start. First, all non-in-depth can whip in-depth in combat to reset their morale and buff their stats. Finally, captives. In-depth earn 25% less experience, are capped at level 7, and will die if struck down. So various new additions with this Manhunters party. Okay. Not sure how I feel about that, especially the level 7 cap. Traditionally, characters can hit level 11 as their cap, so level 7 means you basically get 4 less perks for the in-depth. And the fact that the in-depth will permanently die if they're killed is just it's a minor drawback, but it's also a bad one. Right? Having a chance of them surviving combat can keep a critical character alive. If they're guaranteed to die, that's never a good thing. I'm probably going to do a Let's Play of Manhunters though, because it seems much more unique than, let's say, the generic Selvin Mercenaries. Finally, Gladiators. Right? The Gladiator start lets you start with 3 experienced gladiators with good equipment but very high daily wages. Each gladiator has a unique trait in combat. And finally, Glorious 3. You can never have more than 12 men in your roster, and if all of your 3 starting men should die, your campaign ends. Overall, Gladiators seems to be, I guess, a slightly different version of Hedge Knights, right? Once again, you're capped at 12 men, but you start with 3 good characters as opposed to a single powerful character, right? I'm not a big fan of either one of these because I generally favor playing very, very long campaigns, right? Campaigns where I can go over 300 days, for example, as I showed it here. So for very long campaigns, it's about sustained combat in general. So a party that's stuck at just 12 characters is not very good for that. You can make it work, but it just adds unnecessary difficulty to a long campaign, like almost ridiculously so. In that sense, I feel like a lot of these new additions, both Manhunters and Gladiators, don't favor long campaigns, right? Yes, Manhunters lets you bring 16 men in combat, but if most of your men are capped at level 7, that's never a good thing for a long campaign. So stuff like that. As an quick example of showing one of my very long campaigns, which ran to 319 days, you can see here I have 20 characters out of the maximum 25 that you can bring. So 25 rather than 12 is, first of all, more than double the 12 limit, and second of all, of these 12 characters, the regular hero cap is level 11, okay, which it says if you hover over a character. Beyond the 11th level, characters are veterans and will no longer gain perk points, but can continue to improve. So the key point there is, you can see I have some characters at level 20. So the key point there is you can get perks until level 11 rather than level 7. So that's a lot more perks that you can pick, 4 more. But other than that, once you hit level 7, you only get incremental stat increases after that. So I think it's like you can choose 3 stats to increase, but you only increase stats by 1. Before that, you're getting anywhere from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 stat increases. So that cap of level 7 versus level 11 is a huge detriment, especially to an end game party where you're wandering the map, 300 plus days into the game, and you need a huge party of 20 plus characters because characters sustain injuries that needs them to be put in the reserve line. Okay, so with that example talked about, I'm just going to go in and briefly jump into a new campaign. Not really playing it out, just to mention some things, okay? So because I'm just jumping in, I'm not going to click on any of the settings. Okay, so I'm going to quickly run it. Starting in the south means you can see here that there are these new sovereign cities. And this sovereign city, for example, is a large and rich city-state. There may be more sovereign cities on the map. This is kind of random in that sense. In this case, unfortunately, there's only a single one, it looks like. So this campaign, due to the random map, only created a single sovereign city. Oh no, there's 2. So there's one here on the bottom left and one on the bottom right. Oh, 3, sorry. Let me take that back. So there's a total of 3 sovereign cities in this case, with the regular northern cities in the farther north. About these southern cities, let me just quickly run into the closest one to talk about what's available in them. So it's large. These cities are large cities, which means there will be lots of locations, but inherently purchasing things at southern cities will be pricier than purchasing things from small villages, although you get more options. With this new update, the southern cities adds a lot of new, obviously Persian or Arabic equipment. You know, wrapped southern helmet, right? Spiked skull cap with mail, southern head wraps, and various weapons. And armors, of course. So these new additions are certainly useful. For example, I like the fact that there's this new addition of these levels, I guess 75 defense armors, which can certainly help, and 60 defense armors, which helps for the early game stages of the game. I've noticed that they really lack decent helmets though, right? But then again, you generally loot helmets, so that's not a big issue. In terms of new weaponry, there's a mix of Arabic weapons like, you know, scimitars, these southern maces, and also new unique weapons. Like if I go into the alchemist, for example, there's these handguns, which are basically like shotgun weaponry, if you will. They only have a range of 2, but they hit in a cone shape in front of you. There's also fire lances, which are basically poor spears, weak spears, but they have 1 extra ammo for a 2 range attack, hitting the 2 tiles in front of you. Finally, the alchemist has various single-use items. For example, there's antidotes, there's smoke bombs, there are fire pots, there are flash pots, and there are acid flasks. So you can purchase these single-use items to make your party potentially more useful, because you always have that extra accessory slot as well as that can be used for these items. Or I'm actually not sure if it uses your accessory slot or if it uses your bag slots, but we'll see in the playthrough. So other than that, there's also, of course, if I go into the weaponsmith, it'll list various weapons. There's some new two-hander weapons, like this pole mace, which is a two-handed mace that attacks at 2 range. And there's also the sword lance, which is a two-handed pole arm that is a nice new addition. So they've added more options for these 2-range weaponry. Although these ones tend to be more towards late game stages than the early game stage. Finally, there's also this battle whip that's a 3-range attack weapon, but it has extremely low damage, 15 to 30. Nonetheless, all these new additions can certainly make the game more interesting. Okay. Last but not least, another new location in the cities is the arena. So the arena is kind of interesting. You get to choose, you basically get asked to fight opponents like snakes, serpents, other bandits, etc. And the key thing about these arena battles is if you win, you get crowns. Okay. If you lose, your characters die. Most importantly though, this is something that you need to be careful about. The fight will be to the death, and you will not be able to retreat or loot afterwards. So if you win the fight, but you lose, let's say, one of your characters, one of the 3 characters you bring to the battle, all the gear on that one character is lost. So weapons, helmet, sword, everything is gone. So you have to be very careful about whether you choose to fight these arena matches. Okay. Finally, some new enemies that are included in this update include the serpents that was just mentioned in this arena, and nomadic tribes. Let's talk about these serpents first. First of all, surprisingly, you can encounter these serpents right away. Like they actually show up on the map. And the problem with that is these serpents, I'm actually going to quickly jump into the battle with my basic mercenaries, okay? The problem with the serpents being so easily engageable is that they're actually incredibly tough and hard to fight. Okay? I'm just going to wait for them to approach to demonstrate this. Okay. So actually, my Southern Mercenaries party has a fire lance and so on to start. So I'm just going to quickly engage. It's very, very deceiving, is what I'm saying. And use this fire lance to attack at 2 range. So, the serpents are able to pull you to them, and their attacks hit very, very hard. Okay? So, they can absolutely crush you if you miss them. So in this case, I was actually able to hit them pretty well. But you can see, they attack for a lot of damage. So while I was able to win this fight, there are times where the serpents can absolutely crush you by pulling your characters to them and then crushing them. So the arena, if you win it, right, then you'll win various gold and you may get various perks, right? I think I just saw someone pick up a perk just now from the battle. So they pick up this pit fighter effect, and I think someone picked up fearless. Yeah. So they're not afraid of death and they get this plus 10 resolve perk. So arena is it's a high risk, high reward situation. If you win without losing anyone, it's amazing for extra resources, but if you lose characters, it's going to cost you a lot of gold and so on. So other than that, I'm going to just delete this one and jump over to my other match briefly to talk about the nomadic tribes. So the nomadic tribes are just new enemies on the world map. You can think of them as being similar to the bandits that you encounter in the previous games. The problem with the nomads is that they're also more difficult than the traditional bandits. What I mean is they have the Arabic weapons, which generally do more damage than weapons you encounter in the north, and they generally have some decent armor and so on. So they're similar to the bandits, but improved, long story short. I would much prefer to face bandits and bandit raiders than the nomads, is my impression so far. And finally, it's worth mentioning that these nomads are just, they're the sovereign equivalent of the bandits, long story short. I mean, human opponents are always nice to face, but my impression is they're more difficult, so the sovereign mercenaries starting in the south seems to be more difficult in general. And finally, you can see here that in this playthrough, there are, once again, 3 of these sovereign cities, and they're all just large cities with either 4 or 5 locations in each of them. So playing it itself can certainly be interesting. Is there anything else? And I'm looking forward to seeing what the Holy War is like when I can get that to happen. So that is my initial impressions so far of how this new Battle Brothers DLC is like. I am going to be definitely doing a Let's Play of this new DLC, so look forward to that. I'm just not doing it yet because I was experimenting with a basic Sylvan Mercenary squad, and you can see that I have this whole, it's day 18, I have the whole squad equipped with 75 defense armors. Some of them have picked up some decent helmets now, the Nomad reinforced helmets. I've fought some bandits for the bandit version of the helmets, padded dented nasal helms. And my backline currently has the traditional backline weaponry of pitchforks and warforks. So this is a solid starting party, which can transition me to mid-game already. And that gave me a good idea of how this new DLC plays out so far. I will admit, my focus was more on the north, so I focused on playing around here and then moving into the north here to fight, rather than staying purely in the south. And that's everything I wanted to say for now. So thanks for watching, everyone. Oh, one last thing I should mention that I didn't. In the cities, in the sovereign cities, there are the Indept, which are slaves, right? Slaves tend to all cost around 200 to 260 gold, so they're reasonably low cost recruits, and they have no wages. So that's a way to, I guess, save money because you don't have to pay them. I have not recruited any of those Indept in this playthrough as the Sylvan Mercenaries, but I think Indept may well be worth recruiting to try things out, even if you're not playing the Manhunter faction, where the Indept are capped at lower stats. I think for regular factions, Indept do not have that lower stat cap. So we'll see. Alright, and I think that concludes everything about my initial impressions of this DLC. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video or found it informative. And on that note, Nitro out.